It's easy to get lost when you don't know the direction you're walking towards, and it becomes even more important to know the way when you're leading others. This is especially true when leading our families to follow Jesus and do what he has called us to do. In this episode, we talk about a family mission and value statement, what ours is, and how to form one for yourself. Thanks for joining us this week. Welcome to the Olive Shoots Family Podcast, where we talk about family and parenting, homesteading, and the things God is leading us towards. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brittany. We've been married for 3 years, have one little boy, and just got our first piece of land where we plan to build and start our homestead. We are passionate about the family unit and getting back to the basics of the way God created us to live. We have big dreams and are learning what it looks like to pursue those dreams while first trusting God's leading.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. When we say family mission and value statement, immediately that can feel like very legal terms or very businessy, but kind of the heart of it is just to have a direction to go and to aim your family towards. And really it's just comparing to other mission statements that maybe businesses or companies have out in the world. For example, Tesla, their mission statement is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And that's that's just a bunch of company direction and goals for them. But, when we think about Tesla, we think about a car company, but their mission statement is much broader than just making cars. The same goes for Chick-fil-A's mission statement, which is to be America's best quick service restaurant at winning and keeping customers. Again, that talks nothing about making chicken sandwiches, making chicken nuggets, as delicious as they are. They don't mention that in their mission statement. They just talk about their end goal and what they hope to accomplish in the world. And so that's the context that we're talking about when we come to a family mission statement or family mission and values.
Yeah, I think whenever we started talking about this is right before Emerson was born. And I remember you had been listening to some podcast or something to get your wheels spinning, and you just came to me, and kind of the big question was, what are we striving for as a family, and what's our overall direction and purpose? And I think it stemmed from about to have Emerson, and we were just kind of whole planning for how we're going to raise him and everything, but it was more than that. But I think the big question we started with was just what are we striving for as a family? Yeah.
And so we began to just sit down together and talk through that and really just think about, okay, what are the big things that we were wanting to do for us? What did we feel like God was leading us towards? And it's all these questions of okay, what does God want us to do? What do we want to do? And just kind of figuring that what that was for us.
And then also just giving us a direction and putting some words down that we could come back to. Mm-hmm. Of this is what we said our mission was. So, honestly, it helps answer other questions, when things come up of job change or just different directions that might not line up with our mission. It's going to make us think extra of does our mission need to change, or is this something we shouldn't be doing because it doesn't line up with our mission? Because I don't think it's that we come up with our mission in January of last year and it's never going to change for as long as we're married and for the rest of our lives. And so I think that there's room for it to change, but at the same time it can help us make decisions along the way if we're going back to that mission of, does this line up with our family mission or not?
Yeah. Yeah, it allows for conversation and decision making where you have something to refer back to of like, in what way do we want to go and how do we want to approach this? And it's not so much like it's a strict guideline or a rule book of following, these are the 3 steps that we do as a family, but it's vague enough that it gives you a clear direction that you're going. It's specific enough that it gives you a clear direction that you're going, but it's vague enough to give you room to let God work in your life and reveal to you the ways and the places in which he wants you to go. And for us, like we said, it took several months of talking and figuring out what we wanted for our family mission statement and what we valued as a family. And for our mission, we kind of landed on 3 things. And just like Brittany said, these 3 things that we decided on for our family, they've really helped to guide what we want to do and what we have said yes to and what we've said no to, and has really helped us, especially through this past year of transition for us. So, babe, you want to do the first one?
Yeah. I think we started off with our mission, and then we came up with the values from the mission.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So our first thing that we kind of both said was that, like, we landed on know and trust Christ more deeply. Those are the words that we used. And we had kind of just been saying, like, obviously we want to pursue Jesus, and we want to that encompasses praying and seeking him through reading the word, and then just striving to know him more, and then as we know him more, to trust him just with whatever he's leading us to or whatever uncertainty we're in. And so we kind of just landed on that as like that's the foundation to everything else that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's the first one for us because it is foundational to every other thing. That is we are stepping out into new things or being led into new things, that direction can't happen unless we first know and trust Christ deeply. And that's something that we want to continue to grow in, that there's never an arrival point in that relationship with Christ. And so that's the most important thing for us. And
and it's an action of something we have to strive to do. It's not just something that happens, but then it's also a commitment to that we made as a family. And so it's something to hold each other accountable to like trust God in the unknown and uncertain.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard for both of us. Sometimes it's harder for one of us than the other, and the other one's reminding, hey, this is part of our mission. We're gonna trust God even though we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna continue to seek to see what he wants from us, or just to know him more. And so I think it's a direction, and then defining that as a family makes it be an accountability thing as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the first reaction to this is like, well, duh, like you guys are Christians, of course, like to follow Christ, that has to be a part of the statement. And it is, that's a big part of it. Like we follow Christ, so we want Jesus to be a part of our mission, our family mission statement. But just like Brittany said, it's more of like, it's also an accountability thing for us and a reminder to us that as we're going through difficult seasons, or as we're going through hard things, or when we come up on decisions or conversations where we're just struggling through them, that it's a reminder to us, number one, to our family, is this is just another way for us to know and trust Christ more deeply. And it helps us to reframe the difficult things that we go through, because this is what we're asking for, and this is what we're wanting for us.
Yeah. And then you want to tell our next one?
Yeah. And that kind of led into the next one, which is to raise disciples and make disciples. And this is actually one of the collections we have on Olive Shoot's makings, because it was just so significant to us to raise disciples, make disciples. And we have been involved in ministry. I was a pastor for several years, and Brittany served with me, and she had been doing youth ministry, student ministry, leading a small group before we even met. And so kind of making disciples was something that we wanted to be a part of and we valued. And as we were thinking about kids and had Emerson, that it wasn't just teaching kids and serving kids. It was, well, how do we do this with our own children? What does it look like to not just make disciples by serving in the kids ministry or student ministry at church? What does that look like to start in our home? And I think it's discipleship and evangelism was something that we both valued, but we wanted to approach that and start with, if that's something that we can do in our community, it's something we need to do in our household as well.
Yeah. And so the raising is like raising our kids to be disciples, and then making disciples outside of our home is kind of the difference in that. And that is like being intentional with our everyday life so that Christ is known in our home to our kids. They can see Jesus through us, not just by the words we say. And then also Jesus is known to the people around us. Same thing, by how we interact with our kids in public, by how we interact with them, by how we minister to them in children's church on a Sunday morning. Like from church to the park to our house, and all of this, just the goal of training our kids up, which a lot of what we talked about, I think, in the last podcast. Do you ever have trouble turning your mind off when your head hits the pillow or getting a good restful night's sleep? We've struggled with that often lately. Between dreaming up new ventures, the long to-do list, and just winding down from the day, it can be difficult to get the much-needed sleep. We've started using Earthly Wellness Goodnight Lotion, and it has made a huge difference. It has helped us to fall asleep faster and to feel more rested when we wake up in the morning. It is rich in magnesium, which has loads of health benefits and helps promote restful sleep and normal sleep cycles. You just apply a small amount, 10 to 15 minutes before you go to bed, and pregnant or nursing mamas, it's healthy and safe for you too. It also helps relieve those leg and muscle cramps that seem to happen in the middle of the night. We can't recommend it enough. If you are interested, click the link in our show notes and check out all the other amazing Earthly products while you're at it. We have grown to love this company because they carry natural, organic, made in the USA products that actually work and are safe for our little babies and kiddos as well. Yes, the link does help support our family. Earthly is generous enough to give a small percentage back to me if you use my link. So thank you so much in advance for your support. And we hope you like the Goodnight Lotion as much as we do. And then our last one was to have a generous home. And this one, I think this was Nathan's idea. And I like, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit because I very much like having people at our house. Like I like hosting. I like after I get over the stress of wanting the house to look good. And then like, you know, if we're preparing food or whatever the situation is, or if we're hosting a small group, like that's the cringing part is like, I knew it was going to stretch me to put that on here because I think like I have a deep desire to want to host people and to want to include people in everyday life, but then the practicality of it, and when it comes down to it, I get like stressed out about it. And so whenever he said that, I was like, I don't know. But I mean, like I said, I feel like it's something we're called to do. We're called to to share life with the people around us. And what better way to do that than to invite them into our home and let them just see how we do life. But two, I think if our mission doesn't stretch us in any way, then like what's the point of it?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just something easy, then why put words to it? Why write it down? Why aim for anything, right? So I think it should not all be super comfortable and easy to do.
Yeah. And we were very specific with the wording of this one, of having a generous home, not because like it's not have a generous house. It's not have a generous place. And so hosting in our house, in our home was a big part of this. And definitely, definitely the part where Brittany in her very tidy and neat and everything has its place is difficult for her sometimes. But it extends out further than the walls of our house into being generous with our time and our money and our resources. And that's something that is the struggle for me of being the provider in our home and already being feeling like I'm stretched in 30 different ways, and my time is demanded in so many different places and things like that to live generously in those ways when sometimes I don't want to, or I feel like I can't, which then just goes back to our first mission statement, which is to know and trust Christ more deeply. And if we are trusting him more and more deeply, then that's going to affect how we're generous with the things that he has given us.
Yeah. I think it also just gives us that last part of it, being generous with our time, money, and resources. Having that as part of the mission statement just helps us to, when it's on the forefront of our mind, which it's not all the time, but when it is, to recognize the ways that we can be generous when we're not in our house. Like when we are out, if we're only focused on just going to the park to play with Emerson or going to Walmart to get the bread that we forgot or whatever, then we're not seeing the people around us. We're just going to do and then come back home. Mm-hmm. And so saying that we want to have a generous home kind of forces us or invites us or reminds us to seek out ways that we can live generously, because usually those don't just like show up. Like you have to recognize them. And if we're just going about our own way and not recognizing them, then we're missing out on that. Yeah. So I think that's kind of a perspective shift whenever we added this, was like, well, if we're going to do this, then we have to pay attention to it. And I don't think we're super great at that all the time yet, just because it's difficult to do in our hurry world. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's definitely, again, like something that stretches. I would say that this one probably stretches me the most. I mean, not that I know Jesus perfectly, but that's something that in my mind, it's easier to sit down and read my Bible and pray than to go do what the Bible's telling me to do. And I think the generous part is the doing part. Like having a generous home is living out what we're reading and what we're learning and what God's leading us in.
Yeah, I think all three of these stretch us in different ways. Obviously, knowing and trusting Christ is shows itself in new ways all the time. And even in raising kiddos and raising little disciples and of challenging ourselves. I mean, if we're generous with our time and intentional when we're out in our community, then we will be making disciples in our community. Mm-hmm. And so they all kind of intermingle together. But it's just yeah, I think all three of them stretch us in different seasons or in different aspects of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we kind of decided on these and when we were able to just articulate, this is the direction that we want to go for our family, then we started to think through the values that we have. And so if these are like the direction and kind of like the far-reaching picture and far-reaching goals that we have for our family, then at the heart of it, what is the why behind those? And what makes up at their most boiled down aspect of them? What is at the heart of these? What is at the heart of these mission? And these are the values that we landed on. It's kind of like the things that drive your mission along. And so
yeah, so like the everyday aspects to the mission.
Right.
And I think we kind of just threw words back and forth and then narrowed it down because we were like, well, that's too many. And I don't know. I mean, we didn't like say you have to have a certain number, but we just kind of like, whereas the mission was more sentences or statements, these were just like words of we value prayer. And we said we value the table. And by that we mean one of the aspects of it was family dinner every night or as many nights as we can. But then even more than that was, like we said, being generous, inviting people to our table, having game nights at the table, just like...
And also that transition, I mean, into homesteading. Homesteading is something that we have been pursuing and have been moving towards. And so the table, it was like all of these things that we were wanting and all of these dreams and goals for us were centered around what we ate, where we were, and the people we were doing it with. And it was like, okay, the table is the perfect image for that.
Yeah. So prayer, the table, and then we said intentional family time. And that's just like we find exactly what it is, intentional. So we kind of said, like, we know we're going to be busy. You're working. I'm home with the kids. But if we're not intentional about scheduling family time, then it's not going to happen. Like if we don't say Saturday is going to be, not every Saturday, but this Saturday we're going to go on a family hike, or Thursday night we're going to play games together. Like if we're not intentional to schedule those, then we just miss out on that whole family aspect because you're going to be at work or you're trying to work on this or whatever. And so that was kind of one that we didn't want to get so wrapped up in whatever's going on or all the busyness that we forget to be intentional with the family.
And I think that one is so important, especially with little ones, that we are forming the culture of our family right now. And so as Emerson is getting older, that he recognizes and understands that mom and dad want to do things with him and with with our family, with kids in the future, that we want to do things together as a family. And so if that's the culture we're building and instilling now when he's 1 year old, and later on down the road, that when he's a teenager, it's not a shock when we say, hey, we haven't had any family time this week. Let's spend some time together on Saturday going and doing this thing as a family together. And that's something that hopefully, because we've instilled that at a young age for him, that's something he begins to value as well.
Yeah, and to value with our family, and then also to carry that on to his family one day.
Yeah, absolutely. We also said that margin and rest is one of our values. And that's probably one of the things that we're struggling most in right now, is just finding that time for margin and rest. But it's created a lot of conversation between Brittany and I of this is something that we value. It's not really happening right now. So what do we do? How do we make this? If we say this is something we value, how do we translate that into our calendar and our schedule and reshape our lives around this thing that's important to us?
Yeah. And I think that with so many of our other, like, just mission and values of being out, being with people, making community, and all those things are good, that sometimes we can overschedule and overdo too many good things that it's not good. Like, the overall of it is not good because we don't have that margin. We don't have that rest with our family, and that just downtime. And so I think that's one of those you just got to balance, because obviously we need community. And so if we had so much margin and just were able to rest all the time, then that would be bad too. So it's like the balance of having that rest, but not like always rest. Like,
not wasting your time.
Yeah, not wasting time and just sitting around.
We have some exciting news. It's been a long time coming, but we are finally launching our shop, Olive Shoots Makings.
During this launch, you'll be able to pre-order shirts for men, women, and children. We put a lot of time and effort into creating these designs and are looking forward to printing them for you.
To celebrate launch month, we wanted to gift you with a coupon to save 15% off your total order. Use the code FAMILYPODCAST, that's all one word, and check out our pre-order options on our website.
Thank you so much for your support in the next step of our small business. And then the next one we said was practicing service. And that's in our community. That's kind of what I said earlier about generous, is just having the eyes to see the needs around us. And just serving each other. But I think that starts even in the home of, like, what does it look like for me to serve my son? And not in the sense of like I'm his slave or I'm my husband's slave or whatever, but like, what does it look like for us to just serve each other in the family? And then what does it look like for Emerson to learn to serve mom and dad every once in a while as he gets older? Of like, maybe it's literally getting somebody a glass of water when you notice they're thirsty and they're working really hard. Like, that's just teaching our kids to recognize Dad's been outside working really hard and he hasn't had any water. I could go give him some water. And it's just that first little step of just recognizing the needs, so that when we're out in the community, he's been recognizing the ways he can serve at home, and so now he's going to be able to recognize some ways he can serve the community. And I think that also is like serving in our church, being on some sort of team. And right now we're serving in kids ministry, but
yeah, that's been fun.
Yeah.
We also said that teaching and instruction was important to us, of just in the context of wanting to homeschool our kids and wanting to go that route, and just how we teach and educate our children. But as we were thinking about this, it just poured into so many different aspects of teaching and instruction that we want to be. We want to make disciples, and that's so much more than just making someone a convert of Jesus or evangelizing to someone, but it's wanting to do life with people and together pursue what it means to be like Christ and to teach one another in becoming more like him. And so teaching and instruction is the educational homeschool aspect of it, but it's also just wanting to be like Jesus and then wanting to share that with other people. And it kind of encompasses everything in our mission statement as well. And then the last one, our last value, was sustainability. That we wanted to be sustainable in our household. That's things like be debt free, raise a lot of our own food and animals and meat and things like that. And not just for the purposes of it'd be cool to do that, but for the purposes that we would be able to be more generous if we're able to provide for ourselves, and we're sustainable for ourselves, then we can then be more generous in giving back in other ways. And so just kind of like we've been talking about, these 7 values of prayer, the table, intentional family time, margin and rest, practicing service, teaching and instruction, and sustainability. These 7 things are kind of all encompassing. They kind of intertwine with all 3 of our family mission, the aspects of our family mission. And you can't really narrow them down to one, but they help us in guiding our daily aspect and our daily view of how to follow this grand mission statement that we have, this grand picture of what we want our family to look like way down the road. And it helps us to focus that into a daily practice in our lives.
Yeah, it helps you to, like you said, just these things are more practical in everyday lives to help everyday part of your life to help you accomplish that overarching mission. And you might be listening and thinking, okay, well, how do we come up with this? How did you come up with this? And we just, like Nathan said, when we started thinking about this, it was literally like right before Emerson was born. So for us, it looked like just sitting on the couch at night or whatever, talking about it over a few months before we finally nailed it all down.
And writing down our ideas along the way. I mean, we had a notebook that we would just frequent and just pass back and forth for a little while.
Yeah, but some other ideas that we had heard from other people, actually some of my cousins said that they go on like a yearly, sometimes it's a weekend getaway, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just a date night because they can't get away for the whole weekend, but just to pray and to plan that out and to plan out your family mission with your spouse, and your values. And if you have kids already, then getting away is probably the best way to be able to do that, whether it's date night or the weekend. And if you don't, then you don't necessarily have to get away. It's not as big of a deal, but just to have that intentional time with just your spouse, to pray about it and to talk about, just bounce ideas off each other of, are y'all even on the same page of where you think you're going? And if you are, great, nail it down to like some specific chartable things that you have a visual of and you know what they are. And then revisit that. And that's something that I don't think we've done that yet. We haven't we've revisited our mission and values, but I don't think we've had an intentional, do we want to change, prayer about it type thing.
Right.
Yet. But that's kind of where we started, was just a conversation. And then it just looks like talking about it with your kids after that. But you want to tell them about the planner that you made?
Yeah. So we came up with a planner, kind of like a guide on just where to start and what kind of questions to ask when you're thinking about your family mission and values. And there's a link. There'll be a link in the show notes, and you can find a free PDF of that on oliveschutz.co. But it's just a compilation of how to discern and figure out what are our family's desires. Like, what are the things that we want for our family? Is that, for us, that's homesteading, that's raising kids, that's having a big family, maybe fostering and or adopting one day. It's being outside, and just all
that's
all
kind of what we
these.
started with the desires, but that wasn't our mission.
Right.
Like that's what we want, but then we didn't say our mission is to have a bunch of kids, or our mission is to be outside.
Exactly. And so you start off with like, okay, what do we want? What are the things that we desire? But then you mix in, what is God calling us to? And so these desires and the callings in your life begin to form the beginning steps of your family mission. But I mean, just like Brittany just said, like that isn't your family mission. That's the desires and the callings in your life. And so you begin to break those things down into your values and what you, the why and the heart behind doing those things, and forming your values of the driving factors of why you do what you want to do. And then from that, piece those things together to actually form your family mission statement, and to form it in a way that that achieving the goals that you have for your family right now today, if you achieved those goals, that your family mission statement would be able to carry on past those goals into the next things God is leading you to. And so if we go all the way back to that example of Tesla, that if their mission statement, if their goal right now was to make the best electric car in the world, well, they might do that. And then what? And then they go back to the drawing board and restart their mission statement, or they restart their goals. But if you're able to form your mission statement, form your family direction around something that is so much more than the vision that you can see right now. The picture that just came to my mind is like standing on a mountaintop and looking at the horizon, and you can, when you're up on a mountaintop, you can see the curvature of the earth, and you can see it dip down past the horizon, and just that you're aiming for 500 miles, 1,000 miles down the road instead of just where you can see. And so you're able to write your family mission statement in a way that when you go past that horizon and you dip down past where you can see right now, that your mission statement will still be able to carry you. And not that you can't change that. That yearly reevaluation, or that every once in a while evaluation, is super important. But to just have the vision to look far into the future of what your family can look like, and to write it in that way. So that's a long explanation, but it's all in the PDF that you can find in the show notes.
Yeah, and I think that after you go through that with your spouse, or if you don't use that and you just talk with your spouse and plan it on your own, like that's fine too. But after you do that, I think the most important, not the most, but a very important aspect is to have a family meeting with your whole family. And if you have a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or babies right now, then that isn't overly important right now because they can't understand. But if you have older kids, then sharing that family mission and values with them is extremely important, because you want them to know the direction you're going, and you want to be able to point the decisions you make or just everyday life things back to that as well, and for them to see it all play out. So if your kids are old enough, they should know your family mission and values. It shouldn't be just a you and your spouse thing, or like they should know it. And when we include them in it as much as we can, obviously it's not going to be an all the time thing, but when we include them in it, then that's how they buy into it also. And then as a family, we're moving together in that mission and vision. It's not just me and Nathan. It's when Emerson gets a little bit older, it's me and Nathan and Emerson and whatever other kids we might have later. Like it's it's as a family, we're all working on this vision and mission together. And then I think like one of the things that we have kind of taglined in Olive Shoots Makings is impacting generations. And I think this is just a powerful way to impact generations by praying about a mission for our family, sharing it with our kids, and then leading them in that, and them buying into it, and then them getting married one day and creating a family mission for their family and leading their kids in it. Like, that's just that generational impact thing of we had, if it becomes normal, then it's something that's going to be normal for them. And so it's something that's something we would hope to pass on, that our kids would use. And then also, I think something that we try to do weekly, and we don't always, is just to have a weekly discussion. It doesn't have to be called a meeting, could be called a meeting, just have a family meeting, or Sunday night before bed, whatever, where you just kind of talk about with your family, with the kids, with everybody, just how the week went, how everybody's doing. Like, it's not a, did we accomplish the mission this week? But it's just a, catch up, make sure that did we miss something? Because we had a busy week. And then just ending with that reminding of our family missions, where it's on the forefront of our mind every week, and it's on the forefront of our kids' mind at the start of every week.
Yeah, it's practical, but it's also a realignment and a check of the system. Well, we hope that was valuable to you guys. We hope that this really helped. Like we said, our mission statement is something that has helped us so much in just decision making and conversations in our home. And we hope and we pray that for you guys, this is something that you guys could use, and that you and your spouse would be able to go through together, and then
make it your own.
And make it your own. Absolutely. Do it. Go through the planner and to form your own, but that you guys would be able to better lead your children to follow Christ. And I think that's just our hope in all of this, is that together, as Brittany and I talk through these things, and kind of sometimes even in the moment are just like, wow, that's really cool. I'm glad you said that. And in real time, are discovering more and more what it looks like to follow Jesus, that we get to do that with you guys and share that with you. So know that we are very thankful for y'all. Thank you for all the support in the launch of Olive Shoots Makings, but also in just listening each week. So we love y'all. We thank you guys, and we'll talk to y'all next week. See ya.